Gentlemen, ladies, anyone in between, I welcome you all. Today we're going bowling for baitcasters. That was probably not the best of ideas, but it didn't have. We'll call it a wash. It was an idea at best. But today we're going to be talking about the new, or relatively new, Abu Garcia Zata or Zeta. I don't know how to pronounce it. Fishing reels nowadays, whether it's the branding or the actual company name, like So You Gay, I Lang, I don't know, or Pissy Fun. Oh, something fell. I don't know what to make of it anymore. At least with Daiwa, you have some consistency because everything's either a Tatula or a Tatula. And you got Shimano, who's turning into Mercedes, and everything's a couple digits, and they have the Corrados and everything else. But anyway, so the goal today is to break down this Abu and go over the pluses and minuses, and there are many. That doesn't really give you much idea of what my initial impressions are, which we'll get to right now. So, it's green. It's red and green, and it's Christmas time. That's pretty much the gist as to why we're doing this now. There's a lot of plastic, and for you guys out there that love recycling, you'll probably love this reel. If you like cast aluminum, you're not going to like this reel. It is a good all-around performer. It casts well. If you're a Lew's fan, you already know what to expect. The braking is very similar. If anything, the Lew's is a little freer. And I guess we'll start popping her open. The reason being behind that, the brakes between the two are so similar. But the Lew's just has fewer magnets. So when these magnets are in range, it's a linear magnetic brake, you're going to get more braking force applied by the magnets than you would on this one, simply because there's fewer magnets. And they have a very nearly identical centrifugal brake, so you can switch a couple pins on, you go to your mags, you could switch them all off and rely solely on the mag. You could back the mag off and go all centrifugal. However you want. You can't fault them for giving something to somebody who has preferences and accommodating pretty much everybody in one reel platform. That being said, I don't like this brake compared to, say, their IVCB 4 or 6 brake, that flying arm brake that's been around since Ryobi, kind of incorporated, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, is one of my favorite brakes. Some of the higher end Abus, I think the Ike has it, the STX has it, the MGX Extreme has it, and the MGX has it. I think even the Premier has it. That is probably the best brake if you want max distance. It just flies. Combine that with a light spool and some of the hybrid ceramic bearings that come in, stock Abu reels in the higher end. You got a good caster on your hands. I like how it casts better than the SLX DC, the MGL anything Shimano, and even the Daiwa Magforce, whether it's an SV spool or a hyper long cast spool. I have a Steez Limited on the way that's got that new boost spool. We're going to find out how that compares. And so it's a decent reel, but like the Mach Crush, $180, really? Even with the non-vegan drag stack of the SLX DC and the lack of ball bearings, I would still go with the SLX. It's just a better user experience for me. This has clicky everything. Shimano doesn't like clicky spool tension adjustment knobs. Who cares? The ka-chunk and chunk of the spool thumb bar release on the Shimano feels better, albeit it's not bad on the Abu. But man, oh man, it's just one of those things that if it's not a Daiwa and it's not a Shimano, it's an OEM from another company, despite it saying Swedish engineering and whatever it says on the side of the Lew's box. It's just a preference for me at that point. So I know guys out there love Lew's. There's plenty of guys that love Abu and Revo. I'm a guy that every time I'm on the water with anything but a Shimano and Daiwa, it's not just a me and an adjustment thing. I don't know. It just doesn't feel as good of a tool as some of the other competition. So let's go ahead and get inside. I guess that's the best thing we can do is compare. And it really is strange because it's never been a sum of all parts that make a reel or make me a fan of a reel. It's nice to see good parts and good machining and lack of plastic here and all sorts of this, that, and the other technology there. Why is this one a different size? It's one of those things where when I'm on the water with it is where my true opinion comes in. And I'll do impression videos where I crack a reel and open a box and do all that kind of stuff and talk about it. But it really comes down to being on the water and spending time on it. And even though the sum of the parts between the Zeta and the Mach favor the Abu, I really can't tell much of a difference between these two reels. I really can't. And that's not a good thing, because I want to be impressed, especially at the $180 range. Once you're around $200, you're no longer getting benefits of the doubt for performance issues and inconsistencies and how the performance changes over the course of 50 to 60 hours, which is its break-in period. And again, even though I don't like the fact that Shimano cheaped out on the SLX and just put a felt drag washer in it, I'm not really seeing the negative, especially for bass fishing. I mean, a felt drag that's heavily greased can lock down at 6, 7, 8 pounds, no problems at all whatsoever, and it'll still pay line when it needs to. I've never had an issue with a relatively new reel in that regards. Now, flattened out, dead felt washers are a different story altogether. But yeah, and now we're staring directly at it. The Abu drag, just like 99% of the reels that Abu makes, it's almost like a tuna drag. Do you need this for bass fishing? Absolutely not. I don't care if you're punching or lock down the drag. Look at this. Look at the big, beautiful drag stack on all those washers that you don't even really need more than just a flattened steel compression washer and a single washer. It's been done that way for a million years. Why reinvent the wheel? And yeah, is it cool to have? What are you gaining having more drag surface area in a reel that's made out of plastic, has a spool shaft that can't support the weight, and has a linearity between 8 and 15 pounds of what? A half an ounce or a quarter of a turn, I should say, not an ounce, sorry, like a half a turn, quarter turn, because that's basically what happens. You go from super loose to halfway in like, I don't know, we'll say 1.5, 2 turns, and then you go another half turn forward and you go from 8 pounds to 20. You can't really dial it in, and you have extra compression due to the fact that you have multiple washers that each washer can compress slightly. It's a carbon fiber drag. They're not squishing down, quite all that much. But you have all that extra drag surface area that could add to that additional ability of payout line under resistance because there's just so much more surface area. But it's not needed. Daiwa, Shimano, they don't do it. You don't need it. It's just something you can advertise on the side of a box. And it's with all that being said, yeah, albeit impressive, it's not something that I care about. And nor should you. Because you're just feeding into the marketing of all these companies where they're just trying to, post big, bold drag numbers. Look at Cast King, look at Sugaling and Pissy Fun and 15 pounds max drag. Right. You'll crunch a bearing in the spool before you hit that number on some of these crap reels. Now, in terms of casting performance and on the water performance, it's a toss-up between this thing and the other Lew's reels that are similar in construction to the plastic frame reels. They can have 10 bearings, they can have 6, as long as they're in the right spots, it doesn't matter. And the SLX proves it, and they don't even have a bearing at the top of the anti-reverse clutch. They just have the bearing. Is it even a bearing on this? I don't even know. Let's find out. Is it even a bearing at the base of the handle shaft? Is it needed? Does it have to be a bearing? No. On my tuna reel Tranx 500 that I used to plug for tuna, I replaced that with a bushing. And it is a bearing on the freshwater bass reel. You're not using this reel, people are using this reel in the salt, so just got to be careful there. That's part of the reason why I put bushings in the big Tranx, because I don't want any, failures due to corrosion setting in. Yeah, man. I wasn't really sure how I was going to be able to portray my true feelings on the Zeta in this video, and I'm still having difficulty because it's not a bad reel, but it's just priced the same or more expensive than the little Tatula over here. Now, is this Daiwa's best reel? No, not even close. Is it a good value, especially for some of the street prices you can get this puppy at? I mean, these things were $110, $110, and you get the T-Wing. And again, the only thing I ask you when you guys are critical of T-Wing, does it cast smoothly? Does it cast more smoothly than when you're hucking baits out there where you can actually feel the line getting throttled back as it's trying to hit that level wind? The wider funnel, if you will, gets rid of that sensation that you're kind of bouncing off the rev limiter. And there's no other reel on the market that incorporates a level wind that gives you a better feeling casting sensation. There's something to be said about that. Well, you're getting more distance. I mean, as a surf caster, using round reels that have no level winds, you are definitely going to get more distance without a level wind, which is just less restriction coming off the spool. On a freshwater bass reel, are you going to see or notice all that much? Not really. It's more or less the braking and where the braking comes in and at what point in the cast, and how hard does the resistance applied by the braking affect the different stages of the cast. Again, there's different stages of the cast. Not many guys talk about it, but you have the let off where you take your finger off the thumb of the spool and the projectile's going as fast as it possibly can. That's usually when the braking is at its highest. Then you have the approach to the apex, and then the apex, and then when it starts coming down and then splash down. So there's a lot of different areas throughout that cast where the RPMs of the spool are changing, how they change due to the strength of the brake, and how they apply later on when the spool's not spinning as fast as it was at the midpoint. And again, when that lure is coming back down, depending on the trajectory, if it still has forward momentum and it's coming back down, there's a secondary period of acceleration that changes whether or not that lure is still going out or just falling straight down. So there's different aspects of all that kind of stuff that, this style brake I never found to perform spectacularly at. Linear magnetic brakes, they brake well. The Daiwa magnetic brakes, being that they have the rotor that pushes out at its fastest and they get sucked back away from the magnetic field as the spool slows down, tends to handle that a little bit better in terms of the later stages of the cast. Whereas something like a DC braked Shimano reel uses an actual computer to control a magnetic field that will then apply the magnetic braking where it deems necessary throughout the cast. Because the SLX, the DC brakes are a magnetic brake after all. Something to consider when guys say they prefer magnetic over centrifugal, but they don't like DC brakes and yada yada yada. I found the DC brake on the SLX DC to perform as I would want. I don't want to say better, but when I'm slinging sidearm jigs, 30 yards, 25 yards, 50 yards, using the number 1 setting is usually where I'm at. I find that it does everything well, but the one thing I noticed about the SLX DC versus all the other reels on the table is the thumb bar is much higher. And if you're a caster that likes and prefers to rely mainly on their thumb to control the, how the spool reacts to what the bait's doing, or if it's a non-aerodynamic bait, I found that I had to choke up a little bit on the reel seat to get my whole hand higher to get around that thumb bar to then feather the spool. And if I didn't do that, I was getting overruns with the number 1 setting when I'm slinging jigs. Something that I had to take a moment and think about, why was this happening? Because I have tons of other DC reels that never had this issue. It's just that the profile of the thumb bar in relation to the spool was proving to be something I had to adjust to. Whereas you have the Daiwa, it just sits so much lower and the spool's just right there. So it's almost a direct line, whereas the Shimano, you have to kind of come up and over or choke up to get that pad of your thumb to feather the spool appropriately. And again, didn't really have that issue with the Revos or the Luz. Just something I had to adjust to on the SLX, which I'm seeing some guys on the internet from when this reel first came out, or this platform first came out, that they claim to have some issues. And I think that's where it was stemming from. They just, whether they adjusted since posting their commentary on it or not, it's something to consider, because it's a good little profile, it's a good little package, and the SLX now is starting down that rabbit hole of becoming a Tatula, where now they have 4 variants. They have the SLX, the XT, the MGL, and the DC. Oy. What's next? The SLX Strengths. So continuing on down the path of the Abu, it's a lot of stuff that we've seen before. Nothing special at all internally. The difference maker being the drag stack between the Shimano and the Daiwa. And if you look at the Luz, you're getting the same deal. And I don't know if it's a gear ratio thing, where they mill out this for weight reduction, but what's Swedish engineered? If I were to tell you that this one was Swedish engineered and this one wasn't, would you be able to tell me what's what? Seriously. Are Luz Swedish engineered? Now, these are not identical reels. You really can't play musical parts. The spool shafts are different lengths because of a reason that I'm not sure of as to why. And you can see that there's a slight difference between the frame and the side plate. You can see this little overhang. They're very similar. They are very similar. Let's blow up the internet, and all of a sudden you're going to see. That'd be funny if that fit. I knew it was. It would have been funny. But yeah, so when you're dealing with the Luz versus the Abu, is it the same factory? Is it? I stopped paying attention to the Banex and Doyo and Silstar and you name it, whatever the OEM suppliers, Trulanoia. Are they the OEM on Alibaba that sells direct to Cast King and is Cast King? Yeah, I stopped paying attention to that because they're all widgets in a box. That's all it comes down to. I know I've been given any more to where the reel comes from. Is it China, Malaysia, Japan? Is it? I've had defects from Japan. I've had defects from China. I've had defects from the US. I was almost going to say from the USA. Man, I'm stuck in the mid 2010s. Back when Van Staal was still made in the USA and sealed surf reels were still made in the USA. But yeah, so in terms of a fishing reel, it's a good reel. Get it on the deal if you like plastic. You don't mind it if you are already accustomed to some of the other similarly platformed plastic reels from Luz. This is going to be right up your alley. You're going to enjoy it just as you have the other reels. If you want a new toy to play around with that you may enjoy a little more, grab yourself an SLX DC and, simple upgrade to the carbon drag stack. I did that on the standard SLX when it first came out. Worthwhile if you're fishing for fish that will pull drag and you're just not looking for a straight lockdown. And again, felt's not all that bad. It's a sin if you're a vegan And I understand that if you're a vegan, you don't want to buy a felt drag stack. It's, it's 2020. It's coming on 2021. I understand that. Gotta move with the times. You know what I mean? And yeah, the Daiwa, not the smoothest thing out there, not the best Daiwa, but it's a Tatula. So it blends in with everything else that they make, including spinning reels. But no, the Daiwa Tatula 100 platform, which retails for like 160. They have a limited with red. Then they have the new CT, and then they have the new SV, but I think they're still selling the old SV. And now there's a new Zillion and an Alpha's coming, and a Steez limited that's silver now. So Shimano did silver, and then now they're moving away from silver. Now Daiwa's doing silver with, oh God. It's like leapfrog and follow the leader and ring around a horsey and pin the tail on the, oh God, it's getting confusing now. Definitely starting to get confused after working on so many reels and reviewing so many reels and spending so much time with so many different reels. They're starting to blend in, but you can pick them apart when you're fishing them side by side on the water. And so I'm going to say go with one of these two here over this reel here on the table. Even if it's a $130 reel, I'd still say step up to these two. I really would. It comes down to there's just something different about a plastic frame, plastic side-plated reel versus a metal cage and plastic side plates. There really is. And it's for that reason I'm saying go with that. That's one of the main reasons. I really do. I mean, it doesn't show up right away, but when you rock that fish and it doesn't move, and you're fishing 40 or 50 pound braid, and you're fishing a wrench tightened drag around heavy cover. I understand that the graphite's not going to break. It doesn't give all that much, but man, does it feel sturdy. It really does. So, I don't know where else to go. It's festive. I like the details. I like the accents. Abu reels look really nice. They really do. They definitely do. And the attention to detail in the paint as compared to that of the Lew's, like, give the spray paint guy a raise. This guy needs some more training. I mean, the amount of overspray on this one. That's like how I would airbrush something or spray paint something. And I think that's about where we're going to stop. So, yeah, guys, I appreciate the time you spent here. It's getting more difficult to accurately compare products and unscripted tell you why I prefer one over the other. And it's more or less a feel thing. It's more or less a preference thing. It's more or less I know what to expect on every single cast. I know when I back off the dial or I change a setting, where that setting is going to put me, and I know what to expect with a specific diameter line and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah. Hope you guys managed to get through this with a smile. And, guys, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year. Hope you guys are having a safe and happy holiday season in these strange times. And until next time, guys, tight lines, and I'll see you soon.